But on
Okay.
Sundays, my dad liked to take me to Lake Buena Vista where I would water ski. And that was his form of baptism.
Hmm.
I did go to a private school in Bakersfield, Heritage Academy, where my mom, she would drive me back and forth to Heritage every single day. So you could imagine the 45-minute drive each way with another farm family out there, the Richardsons. And we would commute back and forth and back and forth. And it was there where I was actually, I went to Hume Lake and I was introduced, obviously they had, worship music and stuff like that at Heritage. So I had developed this relationship with Jesus and I accepted Christ into my heart when I was in about sixth grade, seventh grade. We went to Hume Lake and I saw all the kids raising their hands and I saw what was happening in the room. And that was where I was like, man, there is a power greater than me. And that was Jesus Christ. And that's where
Hmm.
I fully accepted him as my Lord and Savior.
Yeah. How long did that last?
So that lasted about I would say 6 months.
Okay.
And then I just had a really tragic year. I had lost three really close family members in my life at that time.
Like one at a time or all at the same?
All in the same year, Arvin High football star Chad Yarbrough was shot and murdered execution style.
Wow.
He was a really dear family friend of ours. So that hits, the Richardson family that I had spoke about earlier, their mom, Helen Richardson, was a really dear family friend of my mom's, and she had died of cancer. And then my dad's sister passed away all in a year. So here I am,
Wow.
seventh grade, going to funeral and watching all these adults grieve. And, what do most people do when they grieve is they consume alcohol. So
Yeah.
I don't blame my family for that because by any means, it wasn't them. It wasn't, by any means, but that's the way I dealt with grieving at that time.
Yeah.
And
That's how
to
it
me,
started, right?
that's how it started. And then I began to fist fight, and fighting was the way I released anger and aggression. And I didn't drink, in seventh grade. I didn't really pick up drinking until about eighth grade freshman year, but I did fist fight, and I had a lot of anger built up inside of me as a kid, which is just so bizarre because you meet my father, you meet my mother, they're just the most loving people you've ever met.
Yeah.
But as a child, as a teenager, the way I released it was through fighting. So I got kicked out of Heritage Academy for fighting. My parents put me at Sunset School District out in Lamont Wheat Patch area. And you could imagine, I'm, pretty little white boy going to Sunset and Vineland. And I soon realized that I was not a good fighter because they were a lot better at fighting than I was. So they put it to me. I had to go to the hospital on one occasion, but then I would go and I would finish Sunset, graduating my eighth grade year. And then I attended Bakersfield High School where drinking really started to pick up. I really started to use alcohol. And that was my coping mechanism. But again, fighting was still there for me. So I'd get in a fight again and get in trouble. But the drinking just really, really started picking up.
Yeah, because that is very traumatic to have that many people lost, especially right after you find Jesus. I think that's wild because sometimes people
Days, 60 days, I don't know, but I'm getting ready to go to California Youth Authority, which I don't know if you guys know, but that's like prison for kids 18 and under. It's the worst of the worst. It's worse than Camp Keep. And like here I am in juvenile hall, like, oh man, I'm going to go to YA, like CYA, like California Youth Authority. This is not good. So I remember like I had developed this relationship and I had asked Jesus into my life in sixth or seventh grade. And I'm like, okay, God, if you get me out of this, I will do whatever you
I
want me
love it.
to do. I mean, I give it all to you, Lord. Like, here I am, right? What do? Like, we need God. So we go and we reach out and we try to find God. And then we don't need God. So we place him on that back burner a little bit. But here I am in juvenile hall. And I could tell you, I could count every single block wall on that cell unit I was in, man. It was not a great experience. And I reach out to God, and what does he do? He sets me free, and I'm out. And I'm back in high school. And what do I do with God?
Goodbye.
Bye, right? I put him on the back burner.
Yep.
So what happens to my life then? I continue to chase alcohol. I continue to chase girls, and I get in trouble again. I get in a fist fight, and I get kicked out of BHS.
Wow.
My parents send me to Vista, but not Vista that you're thinking about on Rosedale Highway. Vista on P Street in downtown Bakersfield.
The good Vista.
I mean, I think so, right? So I go to Vista P, and again, you know, I'm full of anger, I'm full of fear, I'm full of guilt, I'm full of resentment. And instead of chasing God, I was chasing alcohol and I was chasing fistfights. And I was loud and I was obnoxious in the classrooms, and I was trying to make a name for myself because, you know, here I am, just some Arvin boy with no Bakersfield friends, and I want to fit in and I want to do whatever I can to prove to people that I'm not a sissy. Yeah. So, you know, time goes on, I get kicked out of Vista, and my dad's like, what are we going to do with you? Like, what is it going to take for you to figure it out and realize, like, boarding school in Mexico, you're going. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm thinking virgin pina coladas, Mai Tais, sitting on the beach.
I love this part of the
I'm
story.
going to sit in Mexico, in Sonata. Like, it just, like, I could dream it, right? I remember I'm so hungover. I'm laying in the back of my dad's pickup. My mom and my dad drive me down to Ensenada. Like, I remember crossing the border, waking up in the back seat, like, oh, I'm in Mexico. My anxiety starts kicking in. I'm like, oh gosh, like, we're doing this. We pull up to this Casa by the Sea, it's called, in Ensenada, Mexico. And there's 2 armed guards holding AK-47s or whatever those guns were. I don't know what they were at the time. And I look at my mom and I look at my dad. I'm like, this is not what I expected. And I go in and my dad looks at me and he says, hey, when you're either done with high school, I was 17 years old. And he said, when you're done in high school or you're 18 years old, you can get out. But until then, it's up to you, son. You got to figure it out. So he gave me some tough love. I'd like to tell you, I prayed and I tried to resort back to Jesus, but that wasn't the case. I put my head down and I just grinded. And I got school done. I graduated right before I turned 18 years old. And I got out, and I had talked to you earlier about me water skiing and going to the church, or getting baptized on Sundays with my dad.
Yeah.
So when I got out, I failed to mention I did professional water skiing. When I got out, I signed a contract and I traveled the world for 4 years. I was a professional wakeboarder, water skier, hydrofoil behind a boat. So I got paid to travel the world.
Wow.
So I signed a contract. I flew out to Newark, Jersey, where I spent a few months. And then I signed another contract. I went to China. I went to Australia. I went to Europe. And then I traveled the U.S. tour twice, where, you know, here I am, you know, reaching and trying to get everyone's attention and acceptance. And now I'm a pro athlete, you know, and I mean, yeah, people are like, it's water skiing. It's not football, right?
So this is like I like this part of the story because you would think success would fix somebody, right? Like being successful at a sport or even like in business or something, that would have fixed you because you graduated, you got out, and God blesses you with this gift of athleticism, and you go out there and you think you'd find like, oh, thank you, God. You know, it'd be one of those athletes that would go, I just want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, but it didn't happen.
Right.
It's wild. It's almost like success did the opposite.
So let me ask you, just a quick question for that.
Yeah.
During that moment, like, how was your relationship? Was there any relationship with God, any talk or anything, or?
None at all. I did not, like, I literally was on this pink cloud. of I'm a celebrity now and check me out world. And I thought I had the world in the palm of my hands. I mean, we had sponsors. We were escorted around in Ferraris. We had limo. We had security guards. Like it was. I mean, we had private helicopters to fly from one event to the next event. It's a different water skiing is a different world in other countries.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't cry out to God, and yeah, and the drinking would then continue to get worse, and the drug use would then start into play, and that's when I was introduced to different sorts of drugs when I was on tour.
Wow.
The good stuff, right?
Yeah, back then.
Yeah. So it gets worse. And then what happens in your life?
Yeah, so I did that for about 4 years, traveled the world, and came back to Bakersfield. I was actually in San Diego at a college party and met this gal. She was in college doing nursing school, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna be done skiing. I'm gonna be done traveling the world. I'm gonna just move back. I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna get a girl, have a family, and live the Bakersfield dream. So I moved back. I meet this gal. I propose to her, and what's going on in my life is alcoholism, and I just can't kick the alcoholism.
Wow.
So it ends up sabotaging that engagement, and she decides she does no longer. I don't want to be engaged to her because she doesn't like my drinking, really. So that relationship parts ways, and then I meet another woman at one of my employers in town at the time, which I was going to college at the time.
So hang on. So the engagement is off.
Yes,
And you still drink after that.
absolutely.
Well, yeah.
Of course, right?
Yeah, because I wasn't the problem,
Yeah.
it was someone else. I was footing the blame. So there's this girl, she works at an electrical company. I'm going to college part-time, trying to get my degree to be like this businessman. And like all the guys thought she was like the hottest girl at the company. I'm like, oh, my ego, I still got this. Like, I'm going to date that girl. Well, I end up dating this girl and having a child with her. And her name is Lindsay, which I now have a daughter with today, which is Ryland's mother. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a kid. Like, surely a kid will make me quit drinking. Like, if this doesn't make me quit drinking, I don't know what's going to make me quit drinking. So I have a child, and then Lindsay's just a straight, awesome woman I've ever met. Like, she has a great relationship with God, and she's like, hey, if we're going to have a child, we need to get married. Like, we need to do what's right with God. And just a woman of God, like, just amazing. And I'm like, no, you're absolutely right. So we get married. I think we're married for like 5 months and 3 weeks. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I end up having an affair with another woman, end up getting another girl pregnant, and then Lindsay forgives me. We try to rekindle our marriage, rekindle everything, and I just couldn't quit drinking alcohol. She sent me to rehab down in San Diego. I broke out of rehab to have an affair with another woman, and I could not stop having affairs, and I could not stop drinking alcohol. And
I just want to pause on this part of the story because I think a lot of people in the audience are thinking that your transformation was just like this automatic switch. But there was so much history already built in your story. And like, if you have people in your life that you think they can just flip the script, let me tell you, there is work to be done even after you commit to this transformation that God wants to do in you, or these big changes you want to do. And this is the part, like, you went through all of that, and then what happens?
so I get out of rehab, come back to town. I let Lindsay know, like, it's not in it. I don't want to do it. End up getting back in Bakersfield, getting a DUI. And I'm just like, I got it. I know what I'm going to do. I had the other child. Her name is Trinity. But instead of manning up and saying, all right, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to do what needs to be happen, I did one of the most selfish things a person could do, and man, this is hard. I'm sorry, guys. I packed a bag and I moved to Hawaii, and I signed off parental rights on Trinity. I then had oh man. I then had supervised visits with Rylan. Wasn't this hard at my testimony? Just for you guys that don't know, my daughter Rylan is here right now, and
She is. She's
she's
right over
listening.
there.
And I never shared this testimony in front of her. I know she knows bits and pieces, so it's a little harder than I thought it was going to be, but I want her to be able to listen to it and experience it as well.
Yeah.
So I signed off parental rights on Trinity. I moved to Hawaii, and my dad, being the man of God, I mean, he's just so great. He brings Rylan over to Hawaii to visit me, and she's in kindergarten. And I remember sitting on our lanai, which is a patio in Hawaii, and Rylan's looking up at me, and she said, "Daddy, when are you coming home?" And I looked down at her, and I said, "Soon, honey, soon." And I remember calling my dad a little after that. They went back home, and I said, "Dad, I got to come home, man. I got to figure this out." And I came home, and unfortunately, the devil wasn't done with me. I had to go through some more stuff, and I eventually didn't have supervisor visits with Rylan. Trinity had moved to she had moved to Tennessee with mother. I had no way to contact her for about 5 years. I didn't hear, speak a word from Trinity or her mom. I had written several emails, called, texts, and it wasn't, I made that decision to sign rights over. So it wasn't part of God's plan yet. So I move on with my life. I continue to drink and abuse alcohol. My mom would help me watch Rylan. And I would try to rekindle that relationship with her as much as possible. I had a couple more girlfriends when I moved back to Bakersfield from Hawaii, which I would then sabotage with alcohol. So then I meet this girl, Madison, and I'm like, oh man, she's got 2 kids.
Yeah.
I'm going to marry her. I'm going to settle down, and we're going to fix everything. Still, no God, just Ryan and the bottle and whatever we can to numb and try to fix the pain. So I was with Madison on and off for about 6 years, where, Rylan was a part of our life. And about 4 or 5 years into mine and Madison's relationship, Trinity had called and, saw I had a bunch of billboards in town. I had commercials. So it's like she knew who I was. We look identical. If you guys saw a picture, and we would, eventually have a relationship. I would then ruin that marriage with Madison due to, alcoholism. And I just thought, like, oh, she has kids. Like, I could fill the void, and
I like what you said one time. You said, we were talking about your story, and you said, I felt like I just needed kids to love. Like I was trying to replace my kids that I couldn't connect with like her kids. I was trying to love them, I mean, because at some point you do get desperate, right? Like that's desperation right there, where you're trying whatever it takes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would do what I could do and try to be the best dad I could be to them. Granted, alcohol was, a number one decision and factor maker for me that would eventually tear that marriage apart and resulting us in a divorce, which then I just went on this 2-year hiatus of my business was very successful. I had a solar company in town. I had guys in place. It was making me money. I was traveling. I was at the bar. I was continuing to chase the bottle and my disease. And I think that's, Adrian says it best in the title, is I was winning in the world's eyes, but I wasn't winning in God's kingdom. And everyone says, like, I can't believe you quit drinking. Like, what, everything was great. Like, well, yeah, I didn't lose the cars. I didn't lose the houses.
I think that's the hardest part sometimes, like when you are doing well financially.
Mhm.
And if you're addicted to cocaine, alcohol, heroin, and you're still winning financially,
Yep.
people will leave you alone. And they'll
Yeah.
kind of be like, "Oh, he's doing fine. He's winning.
He's winning in life.
He's winning in life." And it's probably one of the saddest things. It's like sometimes we'll go and minister on Chester, and I'll tell the guys, it's awesome that we minister to the guys on Chester, but I want the guys in that Bank of America building to know Jesus too.
Hmm.
Like it's everybody that needs it. But that in your heart, and get closer to you. Little did I
Yeah.
know.
And we would go to church and try to do that, when I would screw up and I would get 3 months sober and I would get 6 months sober and then I would relapse and we would travel to an exotic place and life would be good, but it really wasn't good,
Yeah.
I tell people everything was
Mm.
good out here on the outside, but inside I was dead.
Mm.
And I really didn't care, to live anymore. I felt so empty. And after that 2 year stretch where she was gone and I would just go self-sabotage and continue to drink and I'll say I used cocaine a lot. And I had this relationship with Rylan where I would see Trinity every once in a while. She would have a dance or something, and I would show up, and I would maybe have someone drive me, or I would try to disguise that I was drinking. And same with Rylan, I would go pick her up at half, and I would bring a driver with me, or I'd bring a friend, and we were always doing things where it involved me drinking. Sure, we went to a Chargers game, but why? So we could take a party bus, and Dad can drink, and I don't think it was too long before Rylan really figured it out. I talked to her today about it, or not today physically, but to this time about it. And she's like, Dad, I knew, like, I'm not dumb. And, after that 2 year stretch, I was just so sick and tired of being sick and tired that I'm like, man, I gotta do something, but I couldn't do it. Like I was so far gone that everything was great on the outside, solar was booming, life was good. And I'm like, how am I going to get sober? So my buddy starts dating this doctor and he posts a picture of her friend. And I'm like, dude, she is really cute. Like you got to set me up with her.
Listen, I say this saying very often. I say, if she's pretty, she's from the Lord. If she's ugly, she ain't from the Lord. So I love that part of your story.
That's really good. Yeah. So I message her and she's like, no, I'm not interested. I don't have time. And I'm like, oh man. And doctors, they are not good with time.
Oh man.
So I'm like, okay.
Good.
So he calls me like a week, 2 weeks later. He goes, hey, she's at this doctor, whatever, this event she was at for people in school. I'm like, I'm going to show up. So I show up and like, I just knew, and people like don't believe me to this day. And I told her, I said, I'm going to marry you.
Just like that.
Just like that.
That's so
And
good.
she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to marry you. And I was probably intoxicated because I was always intoxicated.
Yeah.
But it didn't mean that I wasn't going to marry her. And something in my heart felt that like she was the one. And you guys don't know Ariana. One day we'll do a podcast with her, but she is the most godliest woman. Like she is just amazing. She actually worked for Saddleback Church. She did college ministry. And she's like, just so you know, I'm not staying in Bakersfield. She lived down in Orange County. She was moving back to Orange County. She had no desire to stay in Kern County. And so I meet her and I hide my sickness from her, my disease, alcoholism, for about 3 months. We're doing
Mm.
fun stuff. We're going on wine tours. We're doing all these things. And then one day she's like, what do you do for work? And I'm like, well, I have a solar company. I do some roofing stuff. And, you know, I go, why don't you come to work with me one day? Thinking like, oh, she'll like what
She'll
I
be
do.
impressed.
She'll be impressed with, we're going to start at Pyrenees at 6:30. We're going to go to Luigi's. We're going to go bar hopping and do all these things that I do every day. And I just remember at the end of the day, she's like, you do this every day? And I'm like, yeah, every day. Like, I answer my phone. I'm like, is there something wrong with this? Is this not normal? And she's like, okay. Didn't care, didn't judge. This just was like, okay, that's fine. And, you know, a few months go on and I'm just getting sicker and sicker in my disease. And, you know, I gag when I brush my teeth in the morning. She's like, are you okay? Like, and I'm like, oh no, that's normal. It's just, you know, no, it's alcoholism. I needed a drink. So I remember driving in the car with her. We're going on it up to Orange County or somewhere. And, I just start opening up about drinking and alcohol. And she's like, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah, absolutely. And she's like, are you an alcoholic? And I look at her and I say, no, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I think I'm fine. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Maybe. Because I knew in my heart I was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But did I like what she was going to have to say or what I was going to have to do? Because I didn't want to lose this woman. Like, I knew God put her in my life for a reason.
Mm.
And she looked at me and she's like, okay, I could be with a recovering alcoholic, Ryan, but I cannot be with a drunk. And when she told me that, I just like started weeping. And I'm like, man, okay.
Hang on. Was it like weeping, like you were trying to get her to feel sorry for you, or were you genuinely sad?
I was genuinely like sad.
Okay.
And she goes, okay. She said, do you want me to help you?
Wow.
And I said, I think so. So I remember that night, it was like a party or a dinner or something we had to go to. And I'm like, but not tonight. Because I didn't want to give it up that night. It was a few days later, we were down in San Diego. Her family lives in Carlsbad. And I remember in the hotel room and I just said, hey, I'm done. I want to be done. And she goes, honey, if you're done, I'm going to help you. We're going to do this. Like, we're going to absolutely do this together. And she helped me detox for 4 days. I went through the vigorous, the most brutalist detox you can think about. And she's like, you have to take a drink. And I'm like, a drink? What do you mean? Like, I don't. And she's like, no, you're going to seize. Like, it was that bad.
Wow.
And, you know, and people, again, from the outside looking in, just probably would have never thought it was that bad, but it was. And it was, I was hiding it. So she helped me detox. And then I knew I had to come up with an action plan. I had to do something. So it was 4 days of detox. Be with an alcoholic.
Yeah. They don't teach you that.
They don't teach you that.
Wow.
And, but I remember Adrian, and I met this guy, Adrian was next to me with Ryan Abler. We were on a mountain bike race on one of my 4-month sober stretches. When I would get sober, I would cycle. I would ride mountain bikes or road bikes with Ryan Abler a lot. And Ryan Abler, we were up in Tehachapi. We did a race, and you know, Adrian, myself, and Ryan were on a team. And in between our races, I would go for a lap. Adrian would go for a lap. Ryan would go. And I remember, like, Adrian and I were waiting on Ryan, and I was, you know, sitting there. I don't know if I'd started drinking again or what.
You did.
Yeah. And I go, hey, you want a beer? And I look at Adrian, and Adrian's like, I don't drink, man. And I was like cursing, and Abler gets back, and Abler's like, dude, you know he's a pastor, right? And I'm like, oh no. Okay. So
That's
like
funny.
I would follow him on social media, and I would talk to Adrian, and then Ryan would introduce me to him, and he would see I was having issues in my marriage and my home life, and Ryan would set up, or God would put
Yeah,
Adrian.
he totally set us up, just so you know.
Yeah.
Because he'd be like, "Hey, let's go ride," and I'd be like, "All right, I'm gonna ride. I'll meet you guys at your house." And I remember one time specifically, God's like, "You better show up to this ride." And I was like, "Okay." So I get there, and then Ryan Stenderup pulls up, and I go, "Oh, that's why I'm here." And I didn't know what was going on, but God just like put it on my heart, like, "You're here for this right now." And I remember that day. We're like, yeah.
And you would just plant seeds, and I'm like, what is different about this Adrian guy, and it had nothing to do with him being a pastor. He was just a man of God, and the lifestyle he had, and I saw, and it wasn't luxurious, it wasn't glamorous. He drives a van with a freaking
A creeper van.
Come on,
And-
Wesley. It has a grill, bro.
yeah. And I'm like, man, there's just something unique about him. So I picked up my phone, and I called him, and I said, "Hey, Adrian, it's Ryan. I cannot quit drinking alcohol, and I need help, man. I don't know what to do."
And my response was, well, I can't help you not drink alcohol.
Yeah.
I can't do anything, actually.
Yeah.
I said, only God. And I remember that day. I was like, only God can help you, man. Like, I'm just a guy. And then you said, well, what do I need to do? What did
Yeah.
I tell you?
You need to come over. And he gave me a Bible. And here I am, like, oh man, a Bible? Like, I know nothing about anything in the Bible. Like, I would go to Bible school or class, and I'm like, Matthew, Mark, Luke, I know nothing about Genesis, Adam, Eve. Like, I know nothing. And I'm like, he's going to make me want to read this Bible. And he's like, we're going to read a verse, or we would read, Matthew 6 or whatever the daily reading was. We'd talk about it. And then we would go ride bikes, or we would go run, or we would go swim, and we would just be my friend. And he didn't push the Bible down my throat. He didn't tell me, Jesus says, follow me. And he tells people, follow him and be like him. And that's all Adrian did for me. And, I remember my 90 days sober. I call Adrian. I go, dude, I'm 90 days sober today. That's the day before. I'm going to get 90 days tomorrow. We should ride our bikes 90 miles. And Adrian's like, okay, let's
go.
ride our bike 90 miles. And he did, and he took me, and I followed him, and we got it done. And, basically what I'm getting at is God put Adrian in my life, years before I was able to see who he'd put in my life. And then Adrian discipled me, and I didn't know what that meant until a while after Adrian had been discipling me. And it was basically just to live a godly life and be more like Christ. And because of that today, I share this with all glory to God is, next month, November 10th, I'll have 2 years clean and sober. And then a month after that, in December, is when I'll have 2 years of being baptized. Because after the 4 days of detox, November 10th, I started detox, and then I have it written in my Bible. 4 days later, Adrian started discipling me. And a month later, I said, I'm going to make this public. I want people to know that are going to stand behind me. And the Battle Bros hosted Victory Night at my house.
It was awesome, just so you know. Remember that?
Kyle Watson was there.
It was the biggest victory night we had, and
Yeah.
it was funny because like I noticed all the people were showing up, and I was like, oh man, I got to text Pastor James and let him know I'm not starting a church. Like there was that many people there, and it was. I knew though God was going to do something special that night.
Yep.
Like when God said, "Ask Ryan to host Victory Night," and you're like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Oh, that was easy." I was like, "All right," and that was actually the first night I met Collins too. Collins Reimer, that was the first night I met him. But I remember the anointing just being in that place. There was couples there.
Couple got baptized,
Yeah,
a husband and a wife.
Yeah. And it was like, Warner and his wife got baptized.
Mhm.
And then when it came time to baptize you, I knew, I was like, oh, this is God is doing something special right now. Because sometimes you can feel it. And I felt it that night. And after we baptized you, when you came out of that water, I was like, oh, this dude's different. And
Yeah.
it's almost like we went on this run, and I love this part. We went running last week, and we were going like, okay, we're going to run a couple miles, and we were going to turn
8.
8 miles, but we were going to turn, and God's like, no, keep going straight. And so we kept running straight, and we run into this.
6 that day.
Yeah, we ran into this lady, and we're trying to help her. She had something she needed help with. And I remember Ryan looks at her and he says her name.
Oh.
And she just goes like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm Ryan Stenderup. No way. She's like, and
What happened to you?
yeah, she like, you were unrecognizable to her. But the day you got baptized, that's what I seen. I seen that like, oh, this guy's different when he came out of the water.
You know, I tell everyone in addiction, recovery, or just whatever they're struggling with, when I came out of that water that day, I told Kyle Lawson too, because he was a part of my baptism. Him and Adrian both held me under. But when I came up, it was like an elephant was lifted off my shoulder. Like I couldn't even explain the sense of relief I had of like, oh my gosh,
Something
it's over.
happened.
It's done. Like, and from that point on, people are like, oh, are you tempted to drink? Does it bother you? You know? And I travel a lot, and I'm like, no, like God has removed that from my life. Like
Yeah.
it's not even, I used to get afraid early on in sobriety years ago to go to Hawaii or to travel somewhere. Cause I'm like, oh, there's going to be alcohol. I'm like, I don't care. Like you can have all the alcohol in the world.
Yeah.
God's removed it. The obsession is absolutely removed from my life.
And a lot of people would say that God graced you out because like any kind of addiction that you have, that's why when you first called me, that's exactly why I said only God can do this.
Yeah.
Because there's not a man on this planet or a woman who could fix another person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can help. We can be tools. We can be vessels, but we can't fix another person. We can just help, and God does the rest.
So sorry.
Go ahead,
No,
Wesley.
So you said something very important, you know, like the times that you try to do it without God, the times that you try to do just for you,
Yeah.
or you use a substitute like the kids or a partner or something like that to try to get you through that. And that's something that a lot of people that have had issues with abuse of anything,
Yeah.
you know, addiction of any kind, they struggle with that. They're like, oh, because of my kids, I'm gonna get sober.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work.
No, I mean, my daughter's here, and I would love to say I got sober for you, honey, but at the end of the day, I had to get sober for myself.
Yeah.
And the only person that could get me sober, Adrian said it best, was God. I had to fully conceive and give myself to God and say, you're in control. I'm not. Quit listening to the voice inside my head and just take over.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. And I give glory and credit all to God. However, I am part of this journey group
Yeah.
that I like. Collins Reimer introduced me to them over 12 years ago when, and I said this at M6, my testimony would be a lot shorter if I would have listened to God and the guys in my journey group 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And that was when I was married to Lindsay. And this is the way, you know, that.
And I think that's a good point because like if you're trying to get help, God's going to use people. Like that's just how it works. Like you have guys that I know will be on a bike ride or something, and you'll be like, "Oh, it's my 5:30 a.m. call," and somebody's calling you like Caleb or Cameron, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that part because that is what it takes. Like God is awesome, and He wants to use people. So if you're looking for help out there, God is going to use people to help you. I don't know who it is out there that is feeling that right now, like you're desperate and you need help. Well, the people that are around you, the ones that God placed in your life, are the ones that are going to help you the most. Yeah. Is there any wrap up We got like 10-second wrap up, something you'd like to leave the audience with. Like,
Man, you know, this verse has just been so heavy on my heart lately, and throughout all of my sobriety, it's Proverbs 3:5-6, and it's trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding,
wow.
but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path.
That's awesome. Wesley, what do you think about that crazy story?
I love it, man. I love it. I don't just love the story. I love what he's doing with you now.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that, Ryan. I could have never told when
Yeah.
I met you, when I started talking to you and getting to know you, I would have never known that guy.
Yeah.
And then people started telling me about who you were. I'm like,
That was
No.
Brian. Brian's dead.
yeah. And so I love it, man. And I'm glad to be your friend, man.
Yeah.
I'm blessed.
Beyond grateful for you guys.
Yeah, and we want to thank 511 Media, Mike Harvey, and all the team. Hang on, let me get his name, because if I don't say his name, he's going to punch me after the show. Darius Brown for setting this up and getting all the lighting right for us Brown brothers. But thank you guys for watching. If you guys could leave a comment about how you like this show. Bill Elliott, thank you for all your comments. You're right. God is the one doing it. Keep praying. But thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys have a blessed day.
Rylan?
Talk to you soon. Rylan, you gonna come in here? Hurry. 1,
All right.
2, 3, run, run.
Come on.
The audience
on.
wants to see you. Look,
Come
he
on,
says,
Rylan.
I want to see you.
Yep.
All
Just
right.
come on, say hi to the camera right there. There's the camera right there. You see it? They
Can you
can't
get
see your
down?
head
Your
right
wave.
there. Wave. All right, bye guys.
Thank you.